I dropped my husband off at the airport, thinking it was just another business trip. But just as I was about to leave, my 6-year-old son squeezed my hand tight and whispered, "Mama, don't go back home." "This morning I heard Daddy planning something really bad against us. Please believe me this time." I believed him and we hid, and what I saw next made me panic. But before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to Whispered Stories and write in the comments where you're watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. The fluorescent lights of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport were hurting my eyes that Thursday night. I was tired, that kind of tired that comes from deep inside. You know, it's not just sleepiness, it's an exhaustion of the soul that I'd been dragging around for months without really understanding why. My husband, Quasi, stood beside me with that perfect smile he always wore in public. Impeccable gray custom suit, leather briefcase in hand, the expensive cologne I'd gifted him for his last birthday lingering in the air. To anyone in that terminal, we were the definition of black excellence, the power couple. He, the successful executive, me, the dedicated wife, sending him off before a major business trip to Chicago. If only they knew. By my side, his sweaty little hand holding mine firmly, was Kenzo, my 6-year-old son, my entire world. He was too still that night, quieter than usual, and mind you, Kenzo has always been an observant child, one of those kids who prefers watching to participating. But that night, there was something different in his eyes, a fear I couldn't name. "This meeting in Chicago is crucial, babe," Quasi said, pulling me in for a calculated hug. Everything about him was calculated. I just didn't know it yet. 3 days tops and I'm back. You hold down the fort here, right? Hold down the fort? As if my life was just that, holding everything together while he built his empire. But I smiled like I always did because that's what was expected of me. "Of course we'll be fine," I replied, feeling Kenzo squeeze my hand even tighter. Quasi crouched down in front of our son. He placed both hands on Kenzo's shoulders, in that way he always did when he wanted to look like the perfect father. "And you, little man, you take care of Mama for me." "All right." Kenzo didn't answer. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on his father's face. That look. It was as if he were memorizing every detail, every feature, as if he were seeing Quasi for the very last time. I should have noticed. I should have felt that something was wrong right then and there, but we never notice the signs when they come from the people we love, do we? We think we know the person, that after 8 years of marriage, nothing can surprise us. How naive I was. Quasi kissed Kenzo's forehead, then mine. "Love you both. See you soon." And then he turned, grabbed his carry-on, and walked toward the TSA checkpoint. Kenzo and I stood there, frozen in the middle of that crowd of goodbyes and reunions, watching him disappear. When I finally couldn't see Quasi anymore, I took a deep breath. "Come on, baby, let's go home." My voice came out weary. I just wanted to get back to our house in Buckhead, kick off these uncomfortable heels I'd worn to look the part, and maybe watch something on TV, until sleep took over. We started walking down the long airport concourse, our steps echoing on the polished floor. Kenzo was even quieter now, and I could feel the tension in his small body through the hand holding mine. "Everything okay, sweetie? You're very quiet today." He didn't answer immediately. We kept walking, passing the closed shops, the flight monitors, people rushing with rolling suitcases. It was only when we got near the exit, when the automatic glass doors were already in sight, that he stopped. He stopped so abruptly I almost tripped. "Kenzo, what's wrong?" That's when he looked at me, and God, I will never forget that look. It was pure terror, the kind of fear a 6-year-old shouldn't even know exists. "Mama," he whispered, his voice trembling, "we can't go back home." My heart did a strange flip in my chest. I crouched down in front of him, holding his little arms. "What do you mean, baby?" "Of course we're going home. It's late. You need to sleep, don't you?" His voice came out louder, desperate. A few people turned their heads to look at us. He swallowed hard and continued, now in an urgent whisper, "Mama, please, we can't go back. Believe me this time, please, this time." Those 2 words hurt because it was true. Weeks ago, Kenzo had told me he saw a strange car parked in front of our house. The same car 3 nights in a row. I told him it was a coincidence. Days later, he swore he heard Daddy talking quietly in his home office about solving the problem once and for all. I told him it was business stuff, that he shouldn't listen to grown-up conversations. I didn't believe him, and now he was begging me, tears starting to form in those deep brown eyes. This time I believe you, Kenzo. Explain to me what's going on. My voice came out steadier than I felt inside. He looked around as if afraid someone might hear him. Then he pulled my arm, making me lean in even closer to him, and whispered in my ear. This morning, really early, I woke up before everyone else. I went to get water and I heard Daddy in his office. He was on the phone. Mama, he said that tonight when we were sleeping, something bad was going to happen, that he needed to be far away when it happened, that we weren't going to be in his way anymore. My blood ran cold. Kenzo, are you sure? Are you sure about what you heard? He nodded desperately. He said there were people who were going to take care of it. He said he was finally going to be free. Mama, his voice. It wasn't Daddy's voice. It was different. Scary. My first instinct was to deny it, to say it was his imagination, that he had misunderstood, that Quasi would never. But then I remembered things. Little things I had ignored. Quasi increasing his life insurance policy 3 months ago, saying it was just a precaution for generational wealth. Quasi insisting that I put everything, the house in Buckhead, the car, even our joint savings account, solely in his name. It helps with taxes, babe. Quasi getting angry when I mentioned I wanted to go back to work. It's not necessary, Era. I handle everything. The strange calls he answered locked in his office, the increasingly frequent trips, and that conversation I accidentally overheard 2 weeks ago when I thought he was asleep. He was murmuring into the phone. Yeah, I know the risk, but there's no other way. It has to look accidental. At that moment I convinced myself it was about work, about some risky investment. But what if it wasn't? I looked at Kenzo, at that terrified face, the rolling tears, the trembling hands, and I made the most important decision of my life. Okay, son, I believe you. The relief that washed over his face was instant but short-lived. So, what are we going to do? Good question. My brain was racing. If Kenzo was right and every cell in my body was starting to scream that he was, going back home was a death sentence. But where to go? Whose house? All our friends were Quasi's friends too, part of the same social circle. My family lived in North Carolina, and if I was wrong, if it was all a terrible misunderstanding. But what if it wasn't? Let's go to the car, I decided. But we're not going inside the house. We're going to watch from a distance just to be sure. Okay, Kenzo nodded. I took his hand again and we walked to the parking deck. My heart was beating so hard I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. Every step felt like it weighed a ton. The cool night air hit me as we stepped out. The parking deck was dimly lit with just a few scattered cars. Ours was in a corner, a silver SUV that Quasi had insisted on buying last year. A safe car for my family, he'd said. Safe. What a bitter joke. We got in. I buckled Kenzo in, then myself. My hands were shaking so bad it took me 3 tries to start the ignition. Mama. Kenzo's voice was small in the back seat. Yes, baby. Thank you for believing me. I looked in the rearview mirror. He was curled up in the seat, hugging the dinosaur backpack he took everywhere. I'm always going to believe you, son. Always. And in that moment I realized I should have said that sooner. I should have listened to him from the start. I drove in silence. I didn't go straight to our driveway. Instead, I took a back route through the neighborhood, finding a spot on a parallel street that offered a view of our house through the trees without us being easily seen. I parked in a dark spot between 2 large oaks. From there, we could see our home. Everything looked normal. The streetlights illuminated the sidewalk, our manicured lawn, the porch where Quasi and I drank coffee on Sundays, the window of Kenzo's room with the superhero curtains he had picked out. Home. Or at least that's what I thought it was. I turned off the engine and the lights. Total darkness, total silence except for our breathing. And now we wait, I whispered. Kenzo didn't say anything. He just kept looking out the window, eyes fixed on the house. And so we waited, not knowing that in less than an hour everything I thought I knew about my life was going to crumble. The dashboard clock read 10:17 p.m. when I started to question if I wasn't being completely ridiculous. There I was, hiding on a dark street with my 6-year-old, spying on my own house like we were in a bad movie. What kind of mother does this? What kind of wife suspects her own husband? Of what exactly? I couldn't even form the complete thought in my head. It was too absurd. Quasi never raised a hand to me, never yelled at Kenzo. He was a present father, a provider. But was he a loving husband? The question came out of nowhere and caught me off guard. When was the last time he looked at me with genuine affection? When did he ask how my day was and actually want to hear the answer? When did he ouch me without it being mechanical, automatic? When was the last time I felt loved and not just maintained? "Mama, look!" Kenzo's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. My heart spiked. "What? What did you see?" "That car." I followed the direction of his finger. A vehicle was turning onto our street, but it wasn't just any car. It was a dark van. No decals, no front plate visible. The windows were tinted, so dark it was impossible to see who was inside. The van slowed down as it passed the houses, too slow to be someone just passing through. It was like it was hunting. My breath caught in my throat when the van stopped exactly in front of our house. "It can't be," I whispered. "It can't." But it was. The two front doors opened. Two men stepped out. Even from a distance, even with the poor lighting, you could see they weren't technicians or delivery guys or anything normal. They wore dark clothes, hoodies up, and the way they moved was stealthy, calculated. They stood for a moment in front of our driveway gate, looking around. My instinct was to scream, "Call 911, do something," but I was paralyzed, watching like it was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One of them, the taller one, reached into his pocket. I expected him to pull out a crowbar, some tool to force entry. That would be a robbery. I could deal with a robbery. I could call the police, file a report, move on. But what he pulled out of his pocket made my world collapse. A key. He had a key to our house. "Mama." Kenzo's voice trembled. "How do they have a key?" I couldn't answer. I was too busy trying not to throw up. The man unlocked the front door as if he owned the place. No forcing, no breaking, simply unlocked it. Only... people had a key to our house. Me, Quasi, and the spare key that was in his home office, inside the desk drawer that was always locked. The two men entered my home into the house where I slept yesterday, where I made grits and eggs for Kenzo this morning, where I felt safe. They didn't turn on the lights. I could see flashlight beams dancing behind the curtains. They were looking for something, or worse, they were preparing something. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen, watching. It could have been 5 minutes or 50. Time had lost meaning. All that existed was that vision. Two strangers inside my house with keys only my husband could have given them. Then I smelled it. At first I thought I was imagining it, but it got stronger. A chemical smell, pungent gasoline. "Mama, what's that smell?" Kenzo asked. And that's when I saw smoke. It started small, just a thin thread coming out of the living room window, then another from the kitchen window. And then I saw the glow. That sinister orange glow that can only mean one thing: fire. No. I got out of the car without thinking. No, no, no. Kenzo's hand pulled me back. "Mama, no, you can't go there." He was right, I knew it, but it was my house, my things, the photos from when Kenzo was born, my wedding dress stored in the closet, the drawings Kenzo made that I stuck on the fridge, the quilt my grandmother stitched before she passed, all burning. The flames grew fast, terrifyingly fast. In a matter of minutes, the living room was totally engulfed. The fire licked the walls, shattered the windows, climbed to the second floor where Kenzo's room was. That's when the siren started. Someone must have seen the smoke and called the fire department. The dark van sped off, lights off, disappearing around the corner seconds before the first fire truck appeared. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. Kenzo was hugging me from behind, his little face buried in my back, sobbing. "Kenzo was right," I murmured. "You were right, baby. You were right. If we had gone home, if I hadn't believed him, we would be inside there right now sleeping, unaware. And those men would have. I couldn't complete the thought. My legs gave out, and I fell to my knees right there in the middle of the dark street, watching my life turn to ash." My phone vibrated in my pocket. With trembling hands, I picked it up. It was a text from Quasi. "Hey babe, just landed. Hope you and Kenzo are sleeping well. Love you guys. See you soon." I read the message once, twice, 3 times. Every word was a knife. Every heart emoji was poison. He knew. Of course he knew. He was in another state building his perfect alibi while hiring people to kill us, to burn us alive while we slept. And then he would come back as the devastated husband, the grieving father. He would cry at the funeral, receive condolences, and keep everything: the life insurance, the land, the bank accounts. That's what Kenzo heard him say on the phone. I'm finally going to be free. Free of me, free of his son. The nausea came with force. I turned around and threw up right there on the curb. Everything I had in my stomach came out, along with whatever illusion I still had about my marriage. When I could finally stop, I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and looked at Kenzo. He was sitting on the curb, hugging his knees, watching the house burn. Tears rolled down his face, but he wasn't sobbing anymore. He was just watching. A 6-year-old shouldn't have that expression, that terrible premature understanding that people who should love you can want to hurt you. I sat beside him and pulled him into a tight hug. I'm sorry, I whispered into his hair. I'm sorry for not believing you sooner. I'm sorry for everything. He held on to me as if I were the only solid thing in a world that had turned upside down, and maybe I was. What are we going to do now, Mama? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What do you do when you discover that the man who promised to love and protect you actually wants you dead? We couldn't go home. A home didn't even exist anymore. We couldn't go to the police. Quasi had an ironclad alibi, and it was just me and the word of a 6-year-old against his. We couldn't go to friends or family. Everyone would think I was crazy in shock from the fire, making things up. And Quasi was free, flying back at that very moment, probably practicing the look of shock and sadness he was going to use when he discovered the tragedy. We needed help. Help from someone Quasi didn't know, someone who could understand, someone who knew how to deal with what? Attempted murder, conspiracy. That's when I remembered my dad, Grandpa Langston, before he passed 2 years ago, had given me a card. It was on a rough day right after his cancer diagnosis. He called me to his hospital room, took my hand, and said, Ira, I don't trust that husband of yours. Never have. If one day you need help, real help, find this person. The card had a name, Zunara Apor, attorney at law, and a phone number. At the time, I was offended. How could my dad not trust we? Quasi, who was so attentive to him, who visited him in the hospital, who paid for the best doctors. But now I understood. My father saw something I refused to see, and he left me a way out. I took my phone again. Battery was at 23%. I needed to make a decision fast. Kenzo, remember that card Grandpa gave me? The one I kept in my wallet? He nodded. I'm going to call the person on it. She's going to help us. At least I hoped so. With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. 3 rings, 4. It was going to voicemail when a female voice, raspy but firm, answered. Hello, Attorney Okafor speaking. Attorney. Miss Alipur, my name is Ira. Ira Vance. You don't know me, but my father was Langston Vance. He gave me your number. I need help. Bad. There was a pause. Then Ira Langston told me about you. Where are you? My house just burned down. I'm on the street with my son and my husband. My husband tried to kill us. Another longer pause. When she spoke again, her voice was different, more urgent. Are you safe right now? Can you drive? Yes. Then write down this address. Attorney Zuna's office was in an old brick building in the Sweet Auburn district, the kind of place you pass by without noticing. It didn't have a flashy sign, just a small, faded plaque. Z. Apor, Legal Counsel. It was almost midnight when I parked in front. The street was deserted, only a few streetlights working. Kenzo had fallen asleep in the back seat during the drive, exhausted from crying. I had to carry him. Before I rang the bell, the door opened. A woman stood there. She must have been about 60, gray locks pulled back in a bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain. She wore a simple blouse and jeans like she had been woken up, but her eyes were alert, analyzing every detail of me and Kenzo. Ira, yes, come in quickly. I obeyed. She locked the door behind us with 3 different deadbolts. The office smelled of old books and strong coffee. There were stacks of files everywhere, old cabinets, a table full of papers. Put the boy on the sofa over there, she instructed. There's a blanket on the chair. I laid Kenzo down carefully. I covered him. He kept sleeping, his face still streaked with tears. Coffee? She offered. I was going to refuse, but she was already pouring 2 cups. She handed me one and pointed to the chair in front of her desk. Sit down and tell me everything from the beginning. Leave nothing out. And I told her. I told her about Quasi's trip, about Kenzo's whisper at the airport, about the decision to hide and watch the house, the men with the keys, the fire. Quasi's text pretending to care while knowing we should be dead. Attorney Zuna didn't interrupt me once. She just listened, fingers interlaced under her chin, eyes fixed on me. When I finished, she stayed silent for a long moment. "Your father asked me to look out for you if something like this happened," she said finally. "Langston was a very smart man. He noticed things about your husband that you didn't want to see. That hurt. But it was true. He knew. He knew Quasi was capable of this. He suspected Quasi wasn't who he pretended to be, that he married you for access, that he was dangerous." She took a sip of coffee. "Langston left me some things. Documents, information about you and about Quasi. I thought I'd never need to use them, but she got up and went to a locked cabinet. She pulled out a thick folder and returned, placing it on the table between us. Your father hired a private investigator 3 years ago, discreetly, to check into Quasi's business dealings." My heart shrank. "And what did they find?" "Debts. Lots of gambling debts, mostly." "Your husband has a serious problem, Ira. He owes loan sharks, underground casinos, very dangerous people." She opened the folder showing bank statements, photos, reports. "His businesses have been bankrupt for 2 years. He's been using the money from the inheritance your mother left you to plug the holes, but that's almost all gone." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mother's inheritance. $150,000 she left me, which I put in a joint account because we were married. "What's mine is yours, babe. He spent it all down to the last cent." She turned a page. "And now the lenders are collecting with interest. Quasi owes almost $500,000. People like that don't negotiate. Either he pays or she didn't need to finish the sentence. But I don't have that money. We don't have it. So why the life insurance?" she asked simply. "You have a life insurance policy worth $2.5 million, don't you? Your father insisted on it when you got married, remember? Said it was important to protect you and any future grandchildren." I remembered. I remembered Quasi thinking it was excessive at the time, but accepting. I never questioned it. I never thought, and if I died in an accident, I continued the reasoning, feeling bile rise in my throat. Quasi would receive the $2.5 million, pay the debts, and be free. Exactly. Attorney Zunaira closed the folder, and a fire is the perfect kind of accident. Hard to prove. Arson if done right. Hard to trace. And he has the perfect alibi. He was in another state when it happened. But I didn't die, and neither did Kenzo, and he doesn't know that yet. The way she said that made something click in my head. "You're suggesting that we let him think the plan worked for now." She leaned forward. "Ira, if you show up now, it'll be his word against yours. Do you have proof, witnesses, anything other than the story of a 6-year-old boy who could have misunderstood a conversation?" I had nothing, just the certainty in my heart and the fear in my son's eyes. "But what about the men who burned the house? Won't the police investigate?" "They will. And without leads, they might conclude it was an accident, faulty wiring, gas leak, anything. Those men are pros. Ira, they don't leave tracks." She sighed. Quasi planned this very well. The only flaw in his plan was that Kenzo listened and that I believed him. I looked at my son sleeping on the sofa. So small, so innocent, and yet he had saved our lives. So what do? I can't just disappear. My ID, my cards, everything burned in the house. I have no money. I have nowhere to go. "You have me," said Attorney Zunaira, "and you have something Quasi doesn't know you have." "What?" She smiled, a cold smile that made me see why my father trusted her. "The truth, and time to prove it. Quasi will return tomorrow. He'll pretend to be devastated. He'll put on a show for the police and the neighbors. He'll look for the bodies, and when he doesn't find them, he'll know something went wrong." "Yes, but by then, we'll already be 10 steps ahead." I didn't completely understand what she meant, but I was too exhausted to question, exhausted to think. I could barely keep my eyes open. "You and the boy will stay here tonight," she decided. "There's a small room in the back. It's not the Ritz, but it has a bed. Tomorrow we'll plan the next steps." "Attorney Zuna, why are you doing this? Why help so much?" She went quiet for a moment, looking at a point beyond me, lost in some memory. "Langston saved my life once, a long time ago, when my own husband tried to kill me." She turned her gaze back to me. "I know exactly what you're feeling right now, Ira. The shock, the betrayal, the fear, and I promised your father that if you needed me, I would be here. It is a debt I have the pleasure of repaying." I swallowed the tears threatening to fall. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The game has just begun. I slept for maybe 3 hours, but it felt like 3 minutes. I woke up with Kenzo shaking me scared, asking where we were. It took me a few seconds to remember, and when I did, reality crashed down on me like a bucket of ice water. My husband tried to kill me. No matter how many times I repeated that in my head, it still seemed unreal, surreal, like a nightmare I was going to wake up from at any moment. But it wasn't, and the morning news proved it. Attorney Zuna knocked on the door of the small room at 7 a.m. "Turn on the TV, Channel 2. There it was, breaking news. Massive fire destroys luxury home in Buckhead. Fate of family unknown. They showed the house or what was left of it, just blackened walls and smoking rubble. Firefighters still working, sifting through debris, and then they showed him Quasi getting out of an Uber amidst the chaos, with an expression I recognized, the one he used when rehearsing important chess in the mirror. Calculated worry measured horror. My wife, my son, for God's sake, someone tell me they weren't in there. He screamed at the camera, at the police officers, at anyone who would listen. The reporter explained that he was traveling for business, had just landed, and came straight to the scene. A desperate husband searching for his missing family, she narrated with that serious news anchor voice. I felt Kenzo shrink beside me. "He's lying," my son whispered. "He's pretending he cares." And he was. You could see it if you looked closely. The way he checked the camera angles before collapsing in tears, how his eyes were dry even with hands covering his face, how he asked the fire chief, "Did you find the bodies yet?" with an urgency that wasn't of someone holding on to hope, but of someone needing confirmation. He wanted to make sure we were dead. Attorney Zunara turned off the TV. "He'll look for the bodies all day. When he doesn't find them, he'll start to suspect. We have maybe 24 hours before he realizes you escaped. And then he'll panic. And people in panic make mistakes." She sat on the edge of the bed. "Aira, I need you to tell me, do you know the combination to the safe Quasi has in his office?" I thought for a moment. "I know it, it's his birth date. Too obvious, but it works. He keeps important documents there." "I think so. I never paid much attention. We need those documents, especially if he's stupid enough to have kept something linking him to the men he hired." "But how? The house is swarming with police right now. It will be for a few hours. But at night, when he goes to a hotel, because he won't want to sleep in a burnt shell, we can get in." I looked at her like she was crazy. "You want me to break into my own house? Technically, it's not breaking and entering if you live there." She smiled that cold way again. "And besides, we're going to need proof, evidence, something solid that proves Quasi planned this." "I'm going with you," Kenzo said suddenly. "No way. You're staying here, baby. Mama, I know where Daddy hides things." His voice was small but determined. "There are places you don't know. I know because I watch. I always watch." And he did watch. My quiet son, who everyone thought was shy, was actually incredibly observant. He noticed things I missed. He's right. Attorney Zanera nodded. Children see what adults ignore. If there's something hidden, he'll know where to look. I didn't like the idea. I didn't want to expose Kenzo to danger again, but I also knew we needed evidence and time was running out. The day passed slowly. We stayed locked in the office watching the news, watching Quasi perform his theater. He gave interviews to 3 different channels, always with the same story. A devastated businessman searching for his family, a father's hope, the anguish of not knowing, lies, all lies, through security cameras in the neighborhood that Zuna had access to through a contact. We watched Quasi be taken to the precinct to give a statement. We saw him return and stand in front of the destroyed house for hours talking to neighbors, to police, to anyone who appeared. And then finally, when the sun started to set, we saw him get into a car and leave. "Now," said Attorney Zunara. She gave me dark clothes, gloves, a small flashlight. Did the same for Kenzo. We looked like thieves about to commit a burglary. And in a way, that's exactly what it was. We drove in silence to the edge of the neighborhood, but we didn't go in through the front. Zunaira knew a passage in the back where the wall was lower and there were no cameras. "Benefits of having defended the developer in his divorce," she explained. "We scaled the wall. Well, she and I climbed. We lifted Kenzo over on the other side. It was dark. The smell of smoke was still strong. 20 minutes, whispered Zunra. "Get in. Get what you need. Get out. I'll stay here watching." I took Kenzo's hand and we walked to the house, or what was left of it. The back door, the kitchen one, was partially burned but could still be opened. We entered. God, the destruction was total. Blackened walls, ceiling partially collapsed, the smell of ash and chemicals. Everything that was my life was destroyed. But we didn't have time to mourn. "The office," I whispered to Kenzo. "Where is it?" He guided me, passing through the destroyed living room, going up the precarious steps of the staircase. Quasi's office was on the second floor, and miraculously, it hadn't burned as much as the rest. The door was jammed, but I managed to force it open. The safe was there, embedded in the wall behind a painting that had burned away. I entered Quasi's birth date. Beep, green light, open. Inside were documents, a lot of cash, probably for illegal payments, and an old burner phone. "Take everything." Kenzo's voice sounded from the other side of the room. "Mama, look here." He was pointing under a loose floorboard, a hiding place I would have never known existed. I lifted the board. Inside was another phone, a black notebook, and an envelope. I grabbed everything in a rush, stuffing it into the backpack I had brought. "Let's go quick." We were almost at the door when we heard voices downstairs. "Are you sure nobody's here?" "Yeah. Police already released the site. We're just double-checking." My blood froze. I looked at Kenzo. He was pale. We couldn't go down. Whoever it was blocking our only exit. I grabbed Kenzo and we squeezed inside the office closet. My heart was beating so hard I was sure they would hear us. Through the slat in the closet door, I could see flashlight beams coming up the stairs. 2 men, not police. I recognized the voices. They were the same men who had set the fire. "Boss said to verify if the job was finished," said one of them. Deep voice, southern draw. "Seems they didn't find bodies yet. Impossible." The fire was hot enough that nothing would be left. Maybe they already took them to the morgue. Better make sure. "Check the rooms." I heard steps separating, one going toward the master bedroom, another coming in our direction. The office door opened. Kenzo squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I bit my lip not to make a sound. The man entered, flashlight sweeping the room. It stopped on the open safe. "Yo, Marcus, come look at this." The other guy appeared. "What happened?" "Safe's open." "Wasn't like that when we left." "You sure?" "Absolutely. We didn't even touch the safe, just lit it up and left." Tense silence. "Someone was here," concluded the one named Marcus. "Recently, the dust around it is disturbed. Think it was the cops. Cops don't steal cash. And look, there are small footprints." He pointed the flashlight at the floor. "Too small to be an adult." My stomach dropped. "A kid?" the first man said slowly. "You think?" "I think we got a problem." Marcus pulled one from his pocket. "I'm calling the boss. He needs to know. I couldn't allow it. If he called Quasi, if he told him someone had been there, that possibly we were alive. But what could I do? I was locked in a closet with my 6-year-old, unarmed, trapped. That's when I heard the scream. It came from outside. A female scream, loud, full of terror. What the hell was that? Marcus bolted down the stairs. The other man followed. I didn't waste time. I picked up Kenzo and ran. I went down the stairs so fast I almost tripped. The back door was open. They must have come in through there. We ran to the wall. Zuna was there panting. "Was that you who screamed?" I asked as I helped her jump the wall. I needed to get them out of there. "Did it work?" "Yes," I showed her the backpack. "I got everything." We ran to her car parked 2 blocks away. Only when we were inside, doors locked, engine running, and driving away could I breathe. "Those men saw that someone touched the safe," I said. "They'll tell Quasi." "Excellent." I looked at her like she was crazy. "What do you mean, excellent? Now he'll know you're alive. He'll know you have the evidence. He'll panic." She smiled while driving, and people in panic do stupid things. I don't know if I agreed with her logic, but I was too exhausted to argue. Back at the office, we emptied the backpack onto the desk. Documents, phones, money, the black notebook. Sinara took the notebook first, opened it, started reading, and the more she read, the wider her smile became. "Bingo," she murmured. "What is it? Is your husband meticulous or just dumb?" "Probably both." She turned the notebook toward me. "Look at this. Dates, amounts, names. He documented every cent he borrowed from whom and when he had to pay. He even had notes about conversations with the loan sharks." I scanned the pages. Everything was there. Every debt, every threat he received. And then on the last pages, final solution. Ayara's life insurance 2.5 YM. Accident has to look natural. Contact Marcus. Service $50,000. Half up front. Date Novi 21. That was today. Or rather, it was yesterday. He wrote everything down, I whispered incredulous. Why would anyone do that? Insurance, explained Zuna. If something went wrong, he could use this as leverage against the guys he hired. Prove they were involved too. She picked up one of the phones. And I bet on these burners there's even more evidence. Texts, calls. It took all night to examine everything. The phones were password protected, but Zanera had a tech guy contact who managed to unlock them. And there it all was. Messages between Quasi and Marcus. Needed to be a day I'm traveling. Solid alibi. Has to look accidental. Fire is good. Hard to trace. And the kid, Marcus had asked, can't leave anyone behind either. Quasi had written coldly about killing our son, as if it were a minor detail, an inconvenience to be solved. I felt hate growing inside me. A cold, sharp hate. I was no longer the woman who had married believing she had found love. I was a mother protecting her child. And mothers are dangerous when their children are threatened. Is this enough to arrest him? I asked. Enough to arrest, convict, and throw away the key, confirmed Zuna. But we need to do it right. If we hand this to the wrong police, Quasi has enough money and connections to make it disappear, or worse, to make you disappear. So hat do we do? She thought for a moment. I know an honest detective. Detective Hightower, homicide, incorruptible. If we present the case to him with all this proof, Quasi has nowhere to run. When? Tomorrow morning. But before that, she looked at her phone. Your husband has already tried to call you 7 times in the last hour and sent 15 texts. I picked up my phone. It was on silent, but the screen lit up with notification after notification. Ira, for God's sake, where are you? Babe, I'm desperate. Please answer me. Police said they didn't find your body. Where are you? Are you hurt? Ayura, answer me. And the most recent one sent 5 minutes ago. I know you're alive, and I know you took the things from the safe. We need to talk. Urgent. The mask had fallen. He knows. I said. Perfect. Answer him. What? Are you crazy? Answer him. Tell him you want to meet him in a public place tomorrow morning. Why? Zuna smiled. That smile I learned to fear and admire at the same time. Because we're going to give him a chance to hang himself. I typed the response with shaking fingers. Centennial Olympic Park near the fountain. Tomorrow 10 a.m. Come alone. Quasi's reply came in seconds. I'll be there, Aira. We need to talk. Things aren't how you think. Things aren't how you think. As if I were the crazy one in the story. As if I hadn't seen 2 men torching my house with my own keys. Perfect, said Zuna. Tomorrow morning you meet him. But you won't be alone. She explained the plan. It was risky, maybe insane, but it could work. Detective Hightower agreed to help when she called and explained the situation. He would put plainclothes officers in the park, wiretaps, cameras. All we need, Ed, was to make Quasi confess. He's never going to confess knowing he might be recorded, I argued. He doesn't need to confess with words, she replied. He just needs to act, and desperate men always act. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining the meeting, what I would say, how I would look into the eyes of the man who tried to kill me and pretend normally. Kenzo slept beside me, finally at peace after days of terror. At least one of us could rest. At 9:30 the next morning we were positioned, me sitting on a bench in Centennial Park, wearing a jacket with a built-in wire. Kenzo safe in the office with Zunaira, watching everything through a feed the police set up. Detective Hightower and his team scattered around the park disguised as tourists, hot dog vendors, people walking dogs. And then I saw Quasi. He showed up promptly at 10 a.m. He wore wrinkled clothes, probably the same from yesterday, deep dark circles under his eyes, unshaven beard. For the first time since I met him, he looked human, vulnerable. But I knew the truth. He saw me and practically ran over. Ayura, thank God you're okay. He tried to hug me. I stepped back. Don't touch me. The mask slipped for a second. I saw rage in his eyes before he reverted to expressing concern. Babe, I know you're scared, but you have to listen to me. Listen to you. Listen to you say what, Quasi? That it was all a mistake? That the men who burned our house with our keys were just burglars? He blinked, calculating. You saw, I saw everything. I was there. Kenzo and I saw everything. He went pale. He looked around nervously. Not here. Let's go somewhere private. I'm not going anywhere with you. I kept my voice steady, Eve. And though my heart was racing, talk here now. Why did you try to kill me? I didn't. It wasn't like that. He ran a hand through his hair. Aira, don't you understand? I'm in trouble. I owe a lot of money to very dangerous people. They threatened you, they threatened Kenzo, so you decided to kill us instead? What logic is that? No, I was going to get you out of the country. With the insurance money, we could start over somewhere else, far from those guys. It was a lie so blatant I almost laughed. You're talking about the insurance that only pays out if I die. He froze. He realized the mistake. Aira. He changed tactics. His voice became threatening. You took things from my safe. I need you to give them back now. The black notebook, the evidence that you planned everything. You don't understand what you're doing. If you give that to the police, I go down. And if I go down, the guys I owe will come after you. Either way, you're not safe. But at least it won't be you trying to kill me. The rage finally exploded. You were always so naive. You think I married you? Why? For love. You were a spoiled girl with daddy's money. It was just for that. It hurt, even knowing it was true. It hurt to hear it. And Kenzo, our son, also just for interest. The brat. He spat the words. He was always weird, too quiet, watching everything. Freak kid. And there was the true hate. It wasn't just for money. He truly despised us. That's when I heard Detective Hightower's voice in my ear. We have enough. Move in team. Suddenly the tourists stood up. The vendors abandoned their carts. Everyone converged on Quasi with badges in hand. Quasi Vance, you are under arrest. His face went through 5 ions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, rage, fear, and finally acceptance. He had lost. But before they could cuff him, he did something no one expected. He ran. He sprinted through the park, knocking people over, jumping benches. The police went after him, but he had a head start and was running in my direction. I didn't have time to react. He grabbed me, pulled something from his waistband, a knife, and pressed it against my neck. Nobody moves, he screamed. His voice was unrecognizable. Or I kill her. I swear I'll kill her. Detective Hightower stopped 10 feet away, hands up. Calm down, Quasi, you don't have to do this. Of course I do. She ruined everything, everything. The blade pressed harder. I felt a trickle of blood run down. My brain went into panic mode, but then I remembered Kenzo, my son, watching everything. I couldn't let him see me die. Quasi, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, you're not going to do this. Don't tell me what I am or am not going to do. You're not going to do it because you're a coward. You always have been. I turned my head slightly, looking him in the eyes. Cowards don't kill while looking someone in the eye. They hire other people, and even at that you failed. The knife trembled in his hand, and in that second of hesitation, something happened. A shot, not to kill, to incapacitate. A sniper I hadn't even seen hit Quasi's hand. The knife dropped, he screamed in pain, and in seconds he was on the ground, handcuffed, surrounded by officers. I fell to my knees, shaking. Detective Hightower helped me up. It's okay, it's over. But it didn't feel over. Nothing felt real. I watched Quasi being dragged to the squad car. He was screaming, kicking, threatening. This doesn't end here, Aira. You're going to pay. You're going to pay. Empty. All his threats were empty now. Quasi's trial was fast, with all the evidence, the notebook, the phones, the recordings of our meeting, the testimony of the men he hired who cut a plea deal. There was no defense. They tried to plead temporary insanity, tried to say he was coerced by the loan sharks, tried everything. It didn't work. Quasi was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, attempted murder, arson, insurance fraud. The list was long. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't want to see his face ever again. But Zuna went. She sent me a text when the verdict came down. Justice is served. Justice. The word seemed strange because it didn't seem fair that 8 years of my life had been a lie. It didn't seem fair that my son had to grow up knowing his own father wanted to kill him. But at least we were alive and free. In the following months, I had to rebuild everything, literally everything. Documents, identity, bank account, home. I got access to the home insurance money. Ironic since Quasi had burned it to get a different insurance payout. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. Zanera helped me with all the paperwork. More than that, she became a friend. Maybe the first true friend I ever had. Your father knew I was going to need you one day. I told her one afternoon, drinking tea in the new apartment I rented in Dakar. How did he know about Quasi, a father's intuition? She smiled. Or maybe he saw things that you being in love didn't want to see. Little signs, the way Quasi looked at your family's money. How he asked about inheritances, how irritated he got when you talked about working. She was right. The signs were always there. I was the one who chose to ignore them. Kenzo was going to therapy. At first, he didn't want to talk about what happened, but over time, slowly, he began to open up. The therapist said he was resilient. Children are stronger than we imagine, but even strong, he had nightmares, woke up screaming, saying there was fire, that he couldn't get out, that his daddy was coming. On those nights, I stayed with him, held him, hummed the gospel songs I sang to him when he was a baby, and slowly he would go back to sleep. "Mama," he asked me one night, a few months after the trial, "do you still love Daddy?" The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask that? Because he was bad,